Welcome to the Halley Elise Show, featuring your host, empowerment psychic Halley Elise. She is an author, psychic, and media personality, and has been listed as one of the top 100 psychics in America. Empowerment psychic Halley Elise shares the spiritual, metaphysical, holistic, and magical powers of the universe. Follow Halley on her website at HalleyElise.com, and all her shows can be seen via live stream video. Now, here's your host, empowerment psychic Halley Elise.
Good evening, everyone. Glad you could join us this evening. As always, when I have a guest, I am delighted and excited, though sadly she's unable to be in the station, so we're doing this via the telephone. So even though you'll see a photo of her, you won't actually see her. I've actually have some paperwork in front of me, which, as most of you know, I don't read on the air. I pretty much have it down, but I didn't want to miss anything because our guest this evening, her book is exceptional. It's an easy read. It's comprehensive. It gives detailed information on how to do things so that you really, truly make a difference in your life. The name of the book is 7 Cups of Consciousness. And this is a way to change your life by connecting to higher realms. Our guest this evening is Elise Dow. And I want to explain a little bit about the book because it really is incredible how simple it is and yet how important it is. Elise talks about the different cups. And so for instance, the first cup is about living in a multidimensional reality. And you often hear about my saying that we are multifaceted beings. You know, we exist in different levels and on different levels, and how we perceive things shifts our reality and so on. So there is a big part of understanding this, which Elise gets into. The second cup, you're never alone. And we've talked about that too, about the fact that we have guides and we have angels, and Elise's term is team, which I really like the idea of, that we have a team working in our behalf. Our third cup is you can change your inner world. And again, something we discuss on the Halley Elise Show quite often, not only with me, but also with a lot of guests. Our fourth cup is challenges can help you grow. And here too, we've talked about, things are not always detrimental, or as much as we believe them to be. They are stepping stones. They are ways to learn. And the fifth cup is about the body, and it's nature spirit, which you're going to love this. Sixth cup is soul's wisdom, and seventh cup, which I think is perfect, of course, is that you are perfect. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Elise. Hi, how are you?
Great, and thanks so much for having me on.
My pleasure. Your book, honestly, was such a pleasure to read. And while I'm reading, I'm like, yes, this is what I've been sharing all these years. How great. I was so excited that you're going to be on the air.
Your theme song.
I know, really, really funny, right? So, it was funny. As I was reading the book, I was thinking, what was your actual impetus? I read that, yes, you had an experience that all of a sudden there was this shift, and it was like, wow, how'd that happen? And again, in your book, you make reference to how a lot of people read about things. It's very different from reading about something and actually experiencing it. So was it the experience itself of shifting consciousness that was the impetus to write the book? Or was it actually the idea that so many people share information about their experience but don't tell you how to get there? Or both?
Probably both, but probably more the latter. And after that enlightenment experience, I desperately was reading as much material as I could possibly get my hands on and going to as many seminars as I could to try to get a grasp of how to manage this awareness of these multiple dimensions and hearing guides and having empathic sensitivity. And everyone talked a really big game, but they never gave me the how. And so I was really forced to go deep within, connect with my guides, and figure out my own roadmap, and then tested that roadmap on myself and eventually with my clients, and found that it actually worked. And then after almost 14 years of working the tools in the field, so to speak, wrote the book from that place.
Okay, perfect. Now, I was reading as far as the idea of that line, connecting with that line. People need something that is visual. We can talk to them about abstract ideas for consciousness, and they can understand the idea that, okay, yes, if you get into a certain place, then, you'll automatically shift. And you do what I do. You talk in terms of, okay, initially use your imagination because you'll get there. And I always explain to my classes, about that right hemisphere of the brain and that abstract thought, which opens you up to all of those empathic abilities. And your imagination is a big part of that. So someone could be experiencing exactly what you're talking about, but initially they don't understand it. Using imagination as a vehicle, I think, is brilliant because pretty much everybody can do that. Even if they think they are not creative, they have an imagination.
Yes.
So,
and you have an intent, and you can make requests.
Right.
And so with the imagination, I think of the imagination simply as the key. You put it in the door, you turn it, and then you actually employ your higher self to do the work. And then you actually feel it, so that you're just using your imagination just for the first step, and then you actually bring in a second, a third, and a fourth step, which then helps you palpably feel this energetic shift in the physical realm.
Exactly. And, you don't really, we'll say, delve into alpha state, beta state, delta, theta, all of that. It's more about the, if you will, sensation of it than, let's say, the science of it, which I think people can relate to much better and much more easily than when you get into the science, because so many books are written about the quantum physics. They're written about how we perceive, and then an atom is a certain way, and on, and you lose people that way. And as I mentioned before, I even brought you into the show, the book is an easy read, and I think that's huge. Even the font, I was showing it to a friend, and he said, "Oh, look, it's bigger font." So I had to laugh. I'm like, "See, you don't even need glasses. You can read the book." So that was kind of good. Okay, let's get into the idea of a team. As I, again, briefly mentioned before you came on, you talk about the angelic realm and them being with us as well as guides. What's the differentiation there? Because a lot of people, depending on their religious backgrounds, would say, "Oh, guides, what's that?" But okay to angels. And yet you agree that they have both, and as well as I. So what is your take on that? How can you explain that, we'll say, better so that people can understand it?
A team is with you 24/7. They never leave your side. Your guides come and go depending on what you are doing in your life and depending on the phase of life that you're in. So when I go into a healing session, my healing guides show up. But when I'm in the grocery store and my 24/7 day, my team are with me. And as a child, they were my imaginary friends. But I didn't have a name to put to the team.
Right.
And they all have their own unique personality. They're not fragments of me. They are their own soul entities existing in another dimension, and they're at a similar level of consciousness than the one in the physical dimension. And we have this team, and we can actually use them as a huge resource. And I kind of think of the consciousness on planet Earth in 2015 is the place that you don't really want to come alone at this point in time.
I'll agree.
Everybody on the planet hasn't mastered self-love yet, so it's still a little rough. And so when we come into this world with a team around us, they can buffer the energy, they can protect us to a deeper degree, they can go gather information and energetic resources that we might need as we journey here in this world.
Perfect. And you know what I think is really wonderful? I was reading in the beginning of the book the story about the woman that you had on the table who had been in the car accident, and she should have been dead. And one of her guides stepped in and said, "Well, I was standing, before her, and this is why she's not dead. But oh, my head hurts." And so I think there's that mimicking effect or that mirror effect you're talking about in the physical sense. Here, she's coming in saying, "Oh my gosh, this headache is not going," and her guide is experiencing it. So you had to tap in, to that higher realm to actually assist the guide to shift, so that guide could help her shift, which is brilliant. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, and that was actually one of her team members, and she actually had an interesting phrase that she spoke for several years before this accident, and she said, "I don't care what it takes, I'll take the hit to support my family."
Oh, geez.
And
yeah, there's that intention.
Right? The insurance thing came through, but when we hold a particular stance, we need to be careful about what we are calling in.
Absolutely.
And when she was walking down the street and the semi-truck barreled into her, her team member did buffer the energy. Now, the team member doesn't have a physical human body, but they have an energy body.
Right.
Yeah, and so when it takes a hit like that, it's going to disrupt the crystalline structure, the energetic field of that being, and that being is then going to experience a particular sensation. And it's different than in the human body, but we'll feel it at different places in the body. And your team will take hits for you. We do want to remind the team to not be attached and desiring for our reality, only for their own. And that was actually something I also wrote about. I was trying to shift procrastination, and one of my team members really wanted to help me be more productive, not procrastinate.
Right.
And they got attached to shifting me into a more productive way of being, but they took the hit because of it.
You know, it's funny. I had lunch with my mother today, and we just recently had a loss in the family, and she said to me, "So, what do you think in respect to if somebody was married more than once, and then they leave the physical body and they deal with the energetic body, and they go back into soul form? Which husband do they get with?" And I started laughing, and I was trying to explain to her it's not exactly how it works. We're kind of intertwined there, and when you're out of the body, it's more of an energetic, if you will, love, for lack of a better way to describe this, and you're welcomed into that love space. It's not like, oh, here's Mr. Smith and here's Mr. John and here's Mr. whoever. And it was just interesting because it opened up this whole vortex of conversation. And my mom looks at me and she goes, "Yeah, that's your thing, honey." So I had to laugh.
She asked the question.
Yeah, but it was just kind of like, okay, I'm listening to you, but it still doesn't resonate. It's just she grew up in a different time, and I've been doing this since I was a kid. So for me, it makes sense. It's easy, but I have to remember that a lot of times people need it simplified, so it makes more sense. And again, bringing us back to 7 Cups of Consciousness, I love the idea that you have these simple steps as well as this more, we'll say, high functioning program to work through. So if somebody is like in a rush, but they want to get the concept and they want to understand and they want to start implementing in their life, they can. But when they have more time to really sit and comprehend and, if you will, internalize information, you have that available to them as well.
Absolutely.
Listen, we have to take, believe it or not, Leah, we have to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. So please stay with us.
Bob, did you see Halley Elise in the paper?
Who?
The empowerment psychic, Halley Elise. They did a 2-page write-up. The columnist was enthralled. Halley went right to an issue that she was dealing with. I'm looking at HalleyElise.com right now.
What are you thinking? Should we schedule an appointment?
Matter of fact, yes. You have issues with Sue and me, my business. Take a look at her background. It's impressive, and she has decades of experience.
I want to put it on my iPad. What's her info?
Empowerment Psychic Halley Elise. HalleyElise.com. 561-755-2166.
Spell it.
HalleyElise.com.
So it's HalleyElise.com and 561-755-2166, right?
561-755-2166. That's it.
You're listening to Empowerment Psychic Halley Elise, and she invites you to visit her website for more information about all that she does at HalleyElise.com. Now, back to your host, Empowerment Psychic Halley Elise.
Hello and welcome back. If you are just tuning in this evening, I have a lovely guest. I have Leah Dow, and she is the author of 7 Cups of Consciousness. And actually, I would suggest that you go to the website, 7cupsofconsciousness.com. Leah has a nice little gift for our listeners. Yeah, you want to fill in the blanks there for me, please?
Yes, people can go and get a free trial week of the Daily Cups, which are 7-minute audio meditations that walk your energy fields through a process of transformation. Or they can get a 45-minute energy balancing session called the Tall Cups of Consciousness if they go to cupsofconsciousness.com.
Perfect. And that's the best way to reach you, according to our mutual friend who connected us.
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. And as far as purchasing the book, can they purchase from 7 Cups of Consciousness, or do they need to go to Amazon? Which is easier?
I recommend going to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or New World Library to purchase 7 Cups of Consciousness book in Kindle or hard copy.
Okay, perfect. So just remember Amazon.com for 7 Cups of Consciousness. And if you'd like to take advantage of Alea's generous gift of the free audio, you want to go to 7cupsofconsciousness.com. Now, before we took the break, we were talking a little bit about team, and we're talking about this person who came in, and you working on that higher realm, or I should say in that higher realm with energy. And as I'm reading the book, I was laughing because you would make little comments in respect to your own life, these little awakenings that would happen. And I'm going, oh, that's familiar. Like, so I was really excited about having the opportunity to have you on the air tonight because we are likened spirits in many ways.
It's great to be on.
So my question to you is, all kidding aside, if you didn't write a book, but you just went through the experience, do you think your life would have been as vastly changed as it is?
I think it would be the same because I've been actually teaching these concepts for since 2005.
Okay.
And then I've been recording the meditations that I do since 2009. And I use all 7 of these concepts in everything that I do. And I
Excellent.
actually used the 7 concepts to create everything that I have been really wanting in my life. I found a partner. I found right livelihood. I found a new place to live.
Beautiful.
Built a new community of friends, all using those 7 concepts.
Right. And I was reading, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I was reading as to the partner, which I thought was kind of cute, that whole embodying the essence and, connecting with that in the higher realm and checking in. And then all of a sudden he walks through the door and you're thinking, oh, I can't tell him anything. But what was it that you said to him? Something about, I can no longer see you professionally? I mean, it was just rolling on the floor.
I can no longer see you professionally, but I'd be happy to play with you. Here's my number.
Yeah, I was just rolling when I read that. I'm like, okay, perfect. And the poor guy was probably, what? As he walked out
He's
saying,
like, why? I said, time will tell. We shall see.
Right. And he said, well, you have my number too, which I thought that was apropos.
Yes.
When a soul is supposed to meet, it shows up. Now, you talk about the body diva. Share with our audience a little bit about that.
I think of the physical human body as a nature spirit, and it has its physical self, but it also has an energetic self, just like we have an energetic self.
Right.
And so when our body recognizes its own unique consciousness as a nature spirit from Earth and of Earth, it moves into way bigger empowerment, personal responsibility, happipiness, and joy. And so often I think we over-identify with our bodies, thinking that we are our bodies. It would be like thinking that we are the horse we are riding or the car we're driving.
Right.
And when that happens, the body actually gets really upset. It feels, it has resentment. And then sometimes the soul that's riding in the body will try to micromanage the body, and then the body feels disempowered. And so the whole premise of Chapter 5 is about bringing yourself into your saddle, holding personal responsibility for just the vibration you hold deep in your core, and then modeling that to your body, and inviting your body to take personal responsibility for loving itself, connecting with itself, and evolving.
Perfect. And, I'm glad you said that as far as taking the responsibility, because also in the book you make reference to that if we need love, if we need to feel love, we have to be accountable for that. We have to actually love ourselves. And again, we have a commonality here because I teach this all the time in the sense that you can't really have something that you don't already know. You can't expect to attract something that you are unable to experience, that you're unable to understand. If you do, it comes into your life and then it leaves very quickly. And I like the way that you have the chapter set up where you're talking about, yes, if this is who I am, then this is who I have to be. And I have to honor myself, and I have to respect myself, and I have to love myself.
Absolutely. And it's really about receiving our own vibrational needs internally instead of looking to the outer world to fill our cup.
Right. Exactly. Okay. So, because I'm sure some people are wondering, if you have all of these guides around you and all of these angels and you have this wonderful team, why is it that they're not always helping? How come you stub your toe, or how come you fail a test, or why is it that it takes so long to move beyond a circumstance?
First question is, are you listening? Second question is, are you deeply connected to yourself so you have the capacity to receive information from them?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the times and then the third question is, are you giving responsibility for being supported to other people instead of holding total responsibility for supporting yourself? And so when I want more support from my guides, I actually increase my inner support for myself so that they will then reflect to me how much I am supporting myself. And I even say that with clients when they walk through the door and I say, can you feel how much you want me to support you and how much you want the angelic realm to support you right now in this session? And they're like, oh my God, so much. And I say, okay, you have to support yourself that same degree, then we can reflect it to you. So those would be the 3 steps that I would go through when you're working with your guides and your team. And then also have your team and your guides hold vibrations inside themselves that will positively impact you. So if you want greater clarity, have your guides hold clarity inside themselves. If you want greater self-confidence, have them hold that inside themselves and model that to you, and then your energy fields start moving to that same frequency.
Well, it really is all about holding space. I mean, if we really think about it, the entire processes that you go through teaches the individual on how to hold the right space, the right vibration, the right frequency to align with your higher self, to align with those higher realms, to be able to communicate better with yourself, with that angelic and guide team. And it's always that, if you will, equilibration, that delicate dance of recognizing and then, as you said, listening and connecting. Because how often are people out of balance simply because they hear, but they're not paying attention?
Right. And then also people talk about, I want to hold a more evolved way of being. But what they don't realize is that they actually have to cultivate presence, self-awareness, in order to become conscious of how they are, in order to shift how they are to access a higher state of being.
Exactly.
And so that actually requires simplification, slowing things down, not overfilling ourselves with energy, information, food, people, socialization. It's allowing for a time of reflection, which currently our society doesn't really support too often.
No, it does not. That's where the meditations come in. That's where books such as yours are so valuable, because it reminds people that you have to have that quiet time. You have to be able to literally get conscious for what your needs are so that they can be met.
Yeah. And I think we're in a process of transformation and evolution. The entire planet is, and we have been ever since the beginning of time.
Right.
And people only shift when the discomfort they're in is intolerable. And so when somebody is in a state of suffering and they can't take it anymore, then they're going to start bringing in different ways of being. And so the book is really designed to help people shorten that learning curve of out of suffering and into co-creative, joyful states.
Right, but you're not saying that the book is all about them getting uncomfortable.
No,
it's awakening.
For people who are so uncomfortable they can't endure it anymore,
right.
And they're willing to do whatever it takes and find a different way of being. And I think that that's when we begin to seek different modalities and forms of meditation or different forms of diet, because what's working, what we've been doing, we can't do it anymore.
Right. But I think, too, at times it's not so much discomfort as it is a restlessness, an unidentified restlessness that somebody is seeking. They want to know, but they're not quite sure what direction to go in. They're constantly looking, and they are looking outside of themselves because they don't realize that they have to go within.
Beautifully put. Absolutely.
Okay, let me give your website again for those who are listening, because we have you on the air in the web TV, so you have a visual of your photo and your book and all, but we also have you on the radio, so covering all bases here. It is 7cupsofconsciousness.com, and for those of you who are going, what about the www? Yes, it's www.7cupsofconsciousness.com. And if for any reason you're not able to connect with the site, you can always connect with me, and I'll go ahead and refer you or send you the link. Okay, so out of all of, I'll say, your case studies, what would be the most interesting one that you could share?
Oh, other than myself, right? Because I've seen it from the inside out.
Yes.
There's so many. That is a brilliant
I know, but they're all funny. They're funny and they're enlightening.
I'm going to share one of my favorite ones, and it's when I was working with a 6-year-old.
Okay.
And she was starting to get pretty restless and uncomfortable in her body. Her ride stopped being so lovely, and her mom brought her in for a session, and I put my hands on her feet, and I scanned her energy fields, and I saw that she was starting to smear herself on her arms, her legs, and out of her saddle. And then she was starting to actually lift her energy off the front of her spine. So it was an interesting combination of
Interesting.
smearing herself on the body and resisting the ride. And then the body, David Nature Spirit, started experiencing this rejection. And then she took that sensation and projected it onto nobody likes me, nobody loves me.
Right.
And so when I was working with her, I walked her super self, higher self, through the process of lifting her energy back onto the front of her spine, off of her arms, her legs, her belly, her butt, and right into her channel of light where she is to be anchored.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as she got her divine line, river of light, firmly anchored on the front of her spine, she opened her eyes and said to me, "Alea, I'm free again."
That's great. And she was 6, did you say? 6 years old?
Yes, she was 6.
Wow. Isn't that amazing?
She me since she was 3. You know, I
Believe it or
probably saw
not,
her wonder-
Alea,
Yeah.
our time is up. Thank you so much for being on. And remember, 7cupsofconsciousness.com to connect with Alea Dow and her programs and take advantage of the lovely gift. Thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Thank you.
Have a great night. And thanks to all of you for listening in to the Halley Elise Show. We'll be back next week. Good night.
Be enchanted and delighted. Connect each week here on WNN for the Halley Elise Show. Also on Facebook and at HalleyElise.com. Thanks for tuning in. The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its host.